Hey, this is Johnny, and I am actually in Pokhara at the end of my trek. And a lot of people have been asking, should I get a guide? Should I go solo, or should I get a porter? Or what about these things that you call porter guides? And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly everything that I've learned through planning my trip and my trek through Nepal, especially on the Annapurna Circuit, but really it applies for any trek in Nepal. So first off, what is the best scenario? That would probably be if you have a group of friends where everybody takes their own personal responsibility. You take your time, really read the guidebooks and say, I'm gonna take 100% personal responsibility, because you can definitely do the trek on your own without a guide, without a porter. But there's gonna be upsides for certain types of people. So in this video, I'm gonna explain who that's gonna be for. So as I said, the ideal situation would be you go with a group of friends, between 2 and 6 people. You each carry your own stuff, so there's no porter, but you are going ultra light. So you don't want your bag to be more than 10 kilos, which is about 22 pounds. And you also want to just test it and actually go hiking on your own for 7 hours somewhere in your backyard, where you can figure out, hey, is this something I actually want to carry for the next 16 days or so? And can I carry it, especially at altitude? Good news is you can find porters on the way, and they might not be as good as the porters you get, if you do your own kind of research beforehand, but they're available in almost every single big village on the trek. And actually a friend who I met on the trek, she ended up hiring one after the first day because her pack was too heavy. Her pack was probably 15 kilos, which was about 30 pounds. And even though she was in pretty good shape, it gets to you. So definitely consider packing as light as possible. And I wrote my packing guide on johnnyfe.com to search for Annapurna Circuit. And you can see what you can keep in there and what you don't need. So second, besides doing it on your own, would be to go with a group. So a group can be really good, or it can make your life kind of suck, because then you're on their whim. What I would suggest is trying to meet the group beforehand to see if you get along, and to read reviews on both TripAdvisor, Bookmundi, and kind of wherever else you can find reviews on that tour company itself. If you can join a good group, it'll be easy because everything's kind of taken care of. You definitely don't need to join a group, but in my scenario, if I would have found a good group, leaving us on a good time, I would have happily joined it. The only caveat is you want to make sure that their plans are in line with yours. So for example, you want to ask questions like, are you planning on walking on the road or on the high passes? For me personally, I really wanted to walk on the high passes. So I wanted to make sure I would join a group that has that same kind of schedule. And the thing is, for groups, there's kind of 2 different real types of groups. Some are really expensive that you book online, that are with kind of Western tour companies. And to be honest, you probably should never spend more than, let's say, $1,100 for the Annapurna Circuit, for example. Bookmundi.com has good prices, and you can see what type of companies are on there. So aside from a tour company, your other option is to book your own guide or your own porter guide. So depending on how many people are in your group, it might not make sense to hire your own guide and your own porter. So there's something called a porter guide, which sounded to me like the ideal situation, because it's somebody who will carry your pack and be a guide. Now, here's the thing, especially in Nepal, you get what you pay for. I ended up getting someone who didn't speak very good English, even though he seemed like it in the beginning when I first met him. Turns out he kind of just nods and pretends he understands everything, even though his level of actual comprehension was pretty low. And he also wasn't properly trained in what altitude sickness was and how to deal with it. So unfortunately, I had a bad experience, but even then, I would still recommend a porter guide for situations like mine, where it's just you and you don't need a separate guide and a separate porter. I would just recommend sitting down and having lunch with the guy first, or interviewing him and asking him basic questions like, what are some symptoms of altitude sickness? Well, what should we do? What would you suggest we do if I start showing one symptom or 2 symptoms? And just make sure you actually get someone who knows what they're talking about, and also has good enough English where you can really communicate, and they can figure out what you need, especially in emergency situations. Also, the reason why you want to have lunch with them is you're going to be spending pretty much 24 hours a day with them for the next 2 weeks. So you want to make sure you actually get along. And this is almost kind of like a must-do. I would meet whoever you're going to go with in person, whether it's your fellow trekkers or your guide or your porter, and sit down with them before you actually take off, because it's going to be a long 2 weeks if you don't get along. So aside from that, regardless of if you go with a group, you go solo and you take your own responsibility and you carry your own bag, or you get a hybrid kind of porter guide, there's going to be pros and cons of each. And in general, a guide or a porter can make your life way easier, or they can make your life way harder. So it's up to you to do your due diligence, meet them, read some reviews, and figure out if they're a good fit or not before you go on it. But everything is possible. Don't let anyone tell you that you have to go solo, you have to go with a group, or you have to do this. There's pros and cons to all of it, and they're all possible. If you have any questions, ask me below, or read my guide on johnnyft.com, where I go into detail about the whole trek. And good luck, you're going to enjoy it because it's a beautiful place.